Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. Now, 8 of our former Indian Navy veterans have been awarded death sentence on the false charge of espionage in Doha. Does Kulbhushan Jadhav case ring a bell? He is an Indian Army personnel who has been detained by Pakistan under the false charge of espionage. This happened several decades ago. India has since then knocked the doors of the International Court of Justice in Hague, but to no avail. He continues to languish in prison in inhumane conditions. It's the Islamist toolkit at play. First by Pakistan against Kulbhushan Jadhav, now it is by Qatar against the 8 Indian Navy personnel. How will India repatriate our men who are detained in Doha? It's going to be a difficult task. And let's speak to our panelists who join me on the telecast right now. Do I have Ujjwal Nigam? Advocate Ujjwal Nigam on the telecast with me. Good evening, sir. I can't resist but draw parallels to the espionage, the false espionage case in which Pakistan ended up putting Kulbhushan Jadhav in prison. He continues to remain there for decades together now. There has been every effort that has been made by India to repatriate him into India. It's not happened. Now, a similar situation that we see in Doha. These men have been in prison for the last more than 1 year and now a death sentence being awarded to them. What are the chances India will be able to wriggle them out of Doha?
Megha, frankly speaking, I am a very optimist in this case. We have to distinguish the case of Kulbhushan Jadhav because Pakistan is admittedly our enemy country, whereas that is not the case with the Qatar government. We have a very good diplomatic relation with the Qatar government. Now I can understand that Doha court has awarded death penalty to our 8 Navy officials on serious charge. Now there are 2 questions. Now we are using our all diplomatic channel as it appears from the news report. The first thing is that whether our 8 Navy ex-officials had given an opportunity and whether the principle of natural justice were followed while holding the trial against 8 officials in Doha, that is to be ascertained firstly. Primarily, it appears from the news report that what are the exact charges were leveled against them, that is also not very clear. Only after our intervention of our consulate at Qatar, they were given the consular access, they were allowed to speak on the telephone with the relatives. But now we have to find out, first the government of India will require to find out whether the 8 officials were given an opportunity to represent their case improperly in Doha court or not.
So,
whether the finding of Doha court, let me complete within a minute, whether the Doha court, that is an army court or regular criminal court, that is also to be ascertained. And thirdly, whether they had given an opportunity to have a legal advice, legal counsel or not, that is to be ascertained. If so, firstly, according to me, we have to challenge in the first instance the order of the death penalty before the appropriate forum according to the Qatar law. Since we have a good diplomatic relation, our Prime Minister had also visited last time, and therefore I think we can definitely repatriate them to our country because it appears that there is no such evidence.
Advocate Nikam, the fact that it has more than 1 year has passed. They were detained in August 2022. This is November 2023. They have still not been able to release what are the charges against which the men have been detained. How do we feel assured that Doha, which has the most stringent of laws, there are death penalties for blasphemy, there are death penalties for adultery, there are death penalties for having an affair, a physical relationship outside of marriage. We understand that Qatar is a very conservative Islamist nation that is governed by Sharia law. Now, in a situation such as this, they don't even release what are the charges against the men for the last 1 year or so. What is the guarantee they are going to do so again? And then, of course, the question comes whether an Indian lawyer can, another question that Indian lawyer can represent our men.
Was not informed by them, but now surely the External Affairs Ministry will study the entire order in detail.
Okay, we'll get back to Ujjwal Nigam. His audio connection has been okay, his audio connection is not there right now. I have with me Commander Bhushan Dewan. He's a former Navy officer. So, you know, it's a deplorable situation that these 8 Indian Navy personnel find themselves in. Again, the question, why is it shrouded in mystery? The fact that if they have been detained, if they have been awarded a death penalty, why is Qatar refusing to give details to India? For what charges have they been given a death penalty?
Thank you, Megha, for having me on your program. We are meeting after a long time. I think you have raised a very pertinent point. The whole thing is shrouded in mystery. I want to share with you that this company for which our 8 naval officers were working was working for Qatari Navy, QEN, Qatari Emir Navy, or QENF, Qatari Emir Naval Force. That company was working, Al Dahra company was working for Qatari Navy for 7 years, 2015 to 2022. And Qatari Navy was very happy. And 90% of the officers in this Al Dahra company working for Qatari Navy were Indian officers, ex-Indian naval officers. And Qatari Navy was so happy with the performance, with training, logistics support, maintenance services. Now at this current issue, which is known that for which espionage charge has been leveled, pressed against our 8 brave veterans, was that they were doing spying on a project. What project? Qatar was trying to get since 2020 a stealth submarine U2I2 from an Italian company. And this company Al Dahra was trying to induct the submarine, a new submarine into Qatari Navy. But having said that, I want to ask you, this Al Dahra company, the CEO was Ajmi, ex-squadron leader of Omani Navy. And he was the owner of this company. He was also arrested in August 22, Megha, but November 22, he was released. And only our 8 officers were kept back.
Right.
And then in March, March, when the first time the charges have been framed against the accused, 8 accused, and that in May the company is wound up. If you now go and see the website or see LinkedIn, Al Dahra has no connection being shown with the Qatari Navy. They just vanished from thin air. This further shrouds the whole thing in mystery. That for 8 years that company was working in Qatar, and Commander Tiwari, one of the 8, he was awarded Pravasi Divas Award for developing, for bringing Qatari and Indian Navy joint cooperation at the hands of President Kovind. And that such kind of stellar record. And I must tell you, I mean, as an ex-naval officer, 71 war veteran, we think Navy is for life. We will never go and do such a thing. You see, you must appreciate Qatar's GDP per capita is about $90,000, almost like Singapore and that kind of level. And they naturally pay very well, of course, for skills. So our naval officers may go to Oman, they go to Qatar, they work for them at very good salary. Why would they ever fall for money, such like this espionage, and all 8 of them at one go?
Yeah.
You can see,
it's a fake case against our 8 Navy personnel. It is a charge which has been falsely put out by Qataris. They refuse to divulge information, details of this cause. Commander Rupan Bembi, the families are suffering the most. The government of India at this point of time has no idea what to do. They had been tracking the case for the last 1 year. They at this point of time are saying that this case is now going to be appealed in a higher court. But the fact that if the Qatari government is determined to put these men behind bars, how is Indian government going to have them released and get them back to India? I again put out the case of Kulbhushan Jadhav, the fact that he continues to languish in the prisons in Pakistan, and simply because Pakistan refuses to do anything, it's under a fake charge, and it's a vendetta that Pakistan at this point of time is playing.
Well, Megha, you put the right words. Actually, if you look at this case, it's all shrouded in mystery, right from the word go. These 8 naval veterans, they were there for greener pastures. They've been in Qatar for over 8 to 10 years. Most of them, their contracts have been renewed annually. So definitely this is going to be a litmus test for our External Affairs Ministry. They are going to have to walk the tightrope. And, when it comes to veterans, there are a lot of emotions involved. Families are having a tough time. Definitely, as a nation, we need to get together and be behind, supportive for this cause to get these veterans back safely into our country. And as far as these people who were there working for this foreign firm in Qatar, the people after, taking premature retirement, 20 years and 1 sailor. So out of these 8 guys, 5 were executive officers with impeccable record, and 2 of them were technical officers, and 1 very proficient sailor. So I'm sure their families are going to be a worried lot, but the External Affairs Ministry, I'm sure the Government of India will be taking necessary measures behind the curtains to keep this case alive and ensure the safety of our veterans. They come back home safely.
Okay.
Well, we can only speculate at this point in time. 18th of December is the National Day of Qatar, and maybe we could look at pardon by the Amir there for these officers and get them back safely to our country.
Advocate Ujjwal Nigam, I come back to you again. This is not okay. Okay, I'm being told that Advocate Ujjwal Nigam again a network issue over there. We'll hope that he joins back into the debate. But Commander Bhushan Dewan, again coming to you now in a situation such as this. This is a fake case by the Qataris against the Indian government, against the Indian people. What could have instigated this, keeping in mind there is also an Israeli onslaught against Hamas? There was the President of United States of America saying that this Israeli attack, the attack on Israel by the Hamas terrorists was in conjunction with the aim to derail the IMEC corridor. And could there be some sort of a relationship between what is happening in Israel right now and this latest situation that comes from Qatar against India?
2-3 things, Megha. I want to tell you that while in the Indian Navy, I have seen Omani warships coming to India. On board those warships, there are ex-Indian naval officers. And on board those Omani warships, there are ex-Pakistani naval officers. So that is the kind of clout the naval officers command in the Oman and Gulf region for their skills, for their competence. But the point is that you see that there is a conflict between Pakistani Navy and the Indian Navy. And this is at number 1. At the behest of Pakistani Naval Officer Navy, they have tried to torpedo the carriers of our Indian naval officers, number 1. Number 2, Megha, May 22, Nupur Sharma made a statement. It's well known. And Qatar was the first country to come up to ask public apology from India. And August 22, you find our naval officers are arrested. All right. And now 3rd October was the 7th and last hearing of these accused ex-naval officers. 3rd October. And mind you, 7th October the attack happened. I will not go beyond that. Circumstantial sequence should speak for itself. And now I want to tell you one more thing, that after this lower court verdict, it will be a higher court of appeal, and after that court of secession. And after that, Amir can even overrule the sentence. But one thing, There is a 2015 agreement between Qatar and India, whereby it is stated that in case, for example, there's imprisonment. In this case, of course, a death sentence. Suppose it is commuted to life sentence or whatever 20 years sentence. Then there is a quid pro quo arrangement that Indian nationals can spend remaining part of their imprisonment in India and vice versa for Qatari nationals. The agreement was signed in 2015. And one more last thing I want to finish off by saying one more thing. I must tell you that there are almost 30 lakhs is the population of Qatar. And out of that, 8 lakhs are Indians, almost 25%. I don't know what kind of, we need to have much stronger bondage rather than being taken up like this and $15 billion trade.
Okay.
But
Fair enough. Advocate Nigam, then, the families at this point in time are helpless. It's an Islamist state with extremely conservative rules, laws. We saw during the FIFA World Cup, there were Indian workers, Nepali workers, Bangladeshi workers who were killed. And there were reports of such sort that were pouring in as well. What is the assurance that the Qatari government or Qatari lawyers or Qatari judges can give to India that nothing is going to happen to our men?
Megha, frankly speaking, this is a judgment given by the Doha court in the first instance. According to the Qatar laws, now if any person is being convicted for the death penalty, he has to recourse to the legal action, means he has to prefer an appeal. Now, so far as this finding of Doha court, first thing we'll require to find out whether a lawyer was given to represent them or not. This is number one. In view of the international convention, any foreign person, any foreign prisoner is required to be given a fair opportunity to put up the case before the appropriate authority. If that is not followed, principle of natural justice were not followed. Now, I may remind you that in Kulbhushan Jadhav, we were compelled to appear we were compelled to go to the International Court of Justice for the simple reason, according to the Vienna Convention also, the consular access was not provided, and only after the intervention of the International Court of Justice giving a speaking order, the Kulbhushan Jadhav was given a consular access and his death penalty that was stayed till his appeal being properly represented according to the Pakistani law. So now we have to see as to what our MEA takes a definite stand on the entire issue and on what material the Doha court has awarded the death penalty.
Okay.
Whether it's a documentary evidence, whether it is a scientific evidence, or only certain presumptions they have given. I am aware that Muslim law in Qatar is a very stringent law. But even then, while applying that principle to a foreign national and especially on such a serious charge of ex-army official of India, the government of the Amir will personally look into the matter.
Okay.
And therefore,
right. I just have to say that it's been over 1 year. They have been detained under charges. They have still not revealed what the charges are. Had this happened to an American or a British citizen living in Qatar, I don't know if they would have followed the same procedure as they followed against India. Are they at this point of time undermining India's strength as a country and therefore they think they can get away with it? Well, surely not. That's not going to happen. But it only becomes more complicated. Is diplomacy between India and Qatar then going to resolve this issue? It's a sensitive one, so precautions, utmost care, caution needs to be taken by the government of India. On that note, I also have with me Kanwal Sibal. He is the former Foreign Secretary of India. And so, the first question, how do you react to these charges that have been made against our Indian Navy veterans, and why is Qatar trying to showcase India as spies of Israel?
Well, first of all, to the best of my knowledge, the charges have not been made public. and have not been shared with us. Or even if they have been shared with us, this has not come into the public domain. There is speculation that it has something to do with a naval project, a submarine project, and some information on that project was leaked to the Israelis. But it's not even certain whether there was such a project or not, or whether this was the real reason why this has happened. So it's all clouded in mystery. As you know, they were arrested far back in July last year, and a year and 4 months have passed, and still there is no clarity on what really provoked this. And initially, as you know, they were kept in solitary confinement, and later, a few months later, there were 2 to a cell, I believe. The lawyers have not been very communicative. We were not given consular access for a long time. So it's all shrouded in mystery, and frankly, it is terribly, terribly high-handed.
Now, what legal options does the government of India have in wanting to be able to repatriate our citizens?
Well, clearly, since there was a hearing and lawyers were involved, and the sentence by the court has been given for the time being, but there is a court of appeal. So clearly, it would go to the court of appeal. But given the opaqueness of the Qatari judicial system, I wonder whether they really have any independent judiciary of any kind.
Right.
It is not very certain what the appeal court would do unless some directive came from a high political level to pass a judgment that would, in fact, de-escalate the issue. So to my mind, going through the judicial process as you would do in a proper democratic country where the judiciary is independent would not really work in this case. And it will have to be a political decision at the highest level of the Qatari government, which means the Emir himself.
What do you think should be the way forward in trying to get all the 8 former Navy officers back to India now?
See, the fact that our own statement says that we have been shocked by this verdict means that they were not expecting it. Means that also that we were not able to assess the situation properly. Or if we had some knowledge about what was happening, we did not really expect such a harsh judgment to be given. That is one. The other, of course, is that the first course of action would be appeal. And at the same time, at the political and diplomatic level, we'll have to play our cards as well as we can, directly and through other parties, to persuade the Emir, the highest political authorities, that such a step is not only uncalled for, but would lead to a collapse of India-Qatar relations, which would neither be to the advantage of Qatar nor to that of India.
Now, also the question that why is it that Qatar held secret hearings in this case? That is also a cause of concern, surprises India and particularly affects the families of the victims.
Well, it's possible that some secret project was involved, and in public hearings, then the project will come out in the open, and the details of the project will come out in the open, and the complicities, so-called, of the Indian naval officers will become public. That is possible. But what surprises me, to the extent that I know, that the government of India and our mission there were not kept in the loop, and hence the surprise at the judgment that has been given. Our statement also says that this is a very delicate subject, and therefore they don't want to have a public discussion on this, and would prefer to deal with the matter behind the scenes, which I think is the right way to do. We must exhaust all possible avenues of discreet diplomacy before we think of any substantive step on our side, which then can, as I said, lead to very serious problems in our relations. The short point is there is absolutely no way that India can accept the death sentence of 8 of our naval officers. And it is surprising that, or it would be surprising if the Emir or at the highest level of the Qatar government, they didn't realize what a crisis this will cause within, political crisis this will cause within India and force government of India's hand.
Why do you think Qatar has decided to create this hostile situation with India?
You know, Qatar is very successful in playing all kinds of very dangerous cards. As you know, they host the leaders of Hamas, and Hamas has just staged a horrific terror attack against Israel. So all the focus is on Iran, on Hezbollah, but there's no focus on a country which actually hosts the leadership. After all, the Americans got rid of the Taliban because they were hosting Osama bin Laden. But when it comes to Qatar, the Americans have used them for reaching out to the Taliban, which opened an office in Doha. And now they have used Doha to get some American hostages released. Doha hosts a very major US military base. It is very close to Turkey. It is very close to Muslim Brotherhood. It has a lot of money. It's sitting on huge piles of gas money, which it uses to buy influence. You know the scandal around how Qatar got the football World Cup. They bribed so many international officials from the football federation. So they have their own particular way of doing things. And besides that, as you know, Al Jazeera is considered a pain in the neck by neighboring Arab states. At one moment, Saudi Arabia and UAE broke diplomatic relations, and Egypt broke diplomatic relations with Qatar. And then Turkey came to the rescue of Qatar as well as Iran. So they have all kinds of dubious links, which they think gives them the kind of protection that they are confident that they have in dealing with India, for instance. If they can play these kinds of extremely devious and dangerous games with so many players and emerge unscathed, and not only unscathed, be considered a useful tool of diplomacy, then I suppose they have a particular thinking and view about how India can be dealt with.
All right. Thank you, sir, for joining us on the telecast. And I thank all my other panelists also for contributing their views on this matter. We'll keep a close eye on these big developments. It's an anxious time for the families as well as the country, as there is going to be a difficult path that India will have to tread to release those 8 Indian citizens. Thanks for watching NewsX.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.